who you are, what year you are, and what your major is. But let me quickly introduce our team. I'm Novella Beskett. I'm the Assistant Dean for National Fellowships and Scholar Programs. And I've been working with the Goldwater competition. This is my 28th year. And this is going to be spring 2022, the 30th consecutive year of Goldwater Scholars at USC. So it's on y'all. We're going to do it, 30 years. This is Ethan Knight. Ethan is one of our National Fellowship coordinators, and he is coordinating the Goldwater competition. And this is Taylor Cribbs. Taylor is one of our National Fellowship advisors, and she helps us with all of our competitions and processes and keeps us all in a good place. So I also want to just go ahead and introduce Felicia McGill and Matt Dugan, two of our three 2021 Goldwater Scholars. So they are going to have some good insider tips from peer to peer, things that, come on in, don't apologize. We're not recording yet. We were just kind of doing a quick hello and kind of introducing the players. So Felicia and Matt are here, and I'll say in just a little bit, we'll be able to get some awesome inside tips from peers that have gone through the process and secured the Goldwater Scholarship. And Dr. Melissa Moss, went to take your breath and came up the hill from Swearingen and Milfray, and serves not only on our campus committee, but on the National Goldwater Selection Committee. So some really fabulous guidance and advice here in National. So we are not recording yet. We're going to do that, but because we have a kind of small group, I thought we might take a moment and just have all of our wonderful students that get extra credit for coming out on the range today introduce themselves in year and major. That'd be super. So I'm going to let you start.
Okay, my name is Adam. I'm a sophomore.
I'm Weston Watts. I'm a sophomore, mathematics and economics.
I'm a freshman.
I'm Silas Scribner. I'm a junior. And I'm a chemistry and physics.
I'm Wisdom, and I'm a junior, and I'm a medicine student working around.
I'm Kaylee. I'm a junior, and I'm going to do a math.
I'm Amanda. I'm a junior, and I'm still majoring in math and bio.
I'm Daniel. I'm a sophomore and majoring in computer science.
Okay, great. We are glad y'all are here. Welcome. The first part of our information we're going to share with you today is just really the basics of the Goldwater competition. We want to make sure that we've got the right people here. We're especially proud that you're here a year early as a freshman to start thinking about the Goldwater, because that's really awesome. So Ethan has polished up this workshop, and it's going to give us some slides with more of the information. So you know that National Fellowships is the home base of National Fellowship Advisement on campus, and Goldwater is one of the competitions that you have to apply for through a campus nomination process.
Yes.
So Goldwater is awarded to college sophomores and juniors for those of you that are committed to careers and research. But that is key. Research, research, and research. One of the handouts you're going to get as you head out today talks about that a little bit. So one of the questions that usually comes up is, I have junior or senior hours already, or maybe I'm a first year student, but I have sophomore hours. You really apply, your eligibility is based on your year of graduation. So you can also verify that in the eligibility requirements on the Goldwater website. So we go by year in school. If your intention, again, the intention of the preference for Goldwater, and Dr. Moss, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, is that you pursue that PhD, so a terminal degree in research. You can be considering an MD degree, but only if you're also looking at a PhD degree, because this again is what about research, research, and research. So if you're doing some clinical, it can be your side project, but your main focus and your main heart of energy has got to be the research. I will say that this is a very competitive national fellowship, both on campus. Sometimes the odds to be nominated on campus can be even more competitive than nationally. We probably have to have at least a 3.8 to be competitive on this campus. I think the average GPA of our Goldwater scholars is closer to a 3.8, 3.9 or higher. You have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. And of course, as I've mentioned, you have to go through a nomination process at USC. All right. So you're gonna hear more about this throughout the presentation, but again, they're looking for a heart of research. What is it you're interested in? Why are you interested in it? And why does that matter? So they're gonna look for the products of your research to demonstrate that yes, you truly are committed to these things. Have you been part of a research group? Have you participated in Discover USC? Have you been able to participate in maybe a REU experience? Those kind of things. They're also going to look at your coursework and how you did in it. Did you have strong grades in the coursework in your major? And again, as talking about the long-term focus on research. Clearly, the Goldwater Foundation is investing in our future researchers. So as researchers, why should we care about what you care about? What are the problems you're going to work on, and how is it going to make our whole society better? Letters of recommendation are extremely important. You have to have 3 letters of recommendation, and once you complete the preliminary application, you'll be in that and can see the actual criteria, but basically you need individuals that can speak to these things about you, right? So they can speak to your passion for a career in research. They can speak to the fact you've done research, you're good in your major. So you want to think about people that maybe have supervised your research or faculty members in your primary discipline. It's not going to help for you to have a letter of recommendation from a high school teacher. Even if they did supervise your research, that's probably too outdated, even if you're a sophomore. And it's not going to help to have a faculty member write a letter outside of a STEM area. All right. So you might be thinking, this is a whole lot of work. Why should I even apply? So I hope that our students will give you some additional insight here. But one of the things that I will say that keeps me excited about this competition for year after year after year is that really you have the opportunity in these applications to really explain and defend and even develop your defense of why you want to go into the areas you want to go into. And we have this fabulous Goldwater committee. So as a part of that, you get to bounce your ideas off of these faculty members that you probably have not had the opportunity to interact with before. And they've all volunteered their time to be on this committee to help you go through this clarification process, to really put your goals in writing and be able to talk with your recommenders about why it is you're applying for Goldwater, writing that research essay, and does it make sense? It's such fantastic preparation for graduate school applications, for other fellowship applications, and we really couldn't continue to do this work if we didn't believe that the process was clarifying and helpful and developmental, whether or not you win. So do think about the value of that. Of course, it's super if you do win the scholarship, but I think there's a lot that comes from the process, even if you are not nominated, or even if you're nominated and you don't win the overall award. Okay, the application. Basically, it's got a lot of pieces and parts, but it's not difficult when you break them down. How many of you all completed the intent to apply form in the spring and already have access to our Blackboard organization? Okay, great. If you have not and you're planning on applying this year, we can add you to that. One of the things that is in the Blackboard organization is for Goldwater, you can see previous winners' applications. And you can kind of see how these pieces of the application actually look at when they've been fleshed out. But basically, you're going to give them your basic information, right? They want to know where you're in school, what are you majoring in, what is your GPA. You're going to have a statement about what your future career goals are and why that's important to you. And what are your future educational plans to meet your career goals? You're also going to have some sections where you can detail the research experiences you've had and your supervisors and outcomes for those experiences in there. You'll have an opportunity to list your college extracurricular activities, and they're interested in that as well. You'll have a short answer question about your some personal background information. It says on the Goldwater application that that's optional. It's never optional. Don't ever leave an answer blank. Always use every space to tell another part of your story. We can help you think up ideas to put in that answer that reflects you. And then there is of course, your course materials. It's kind of interesting. They actually have you dissect your transcript and put it in the Goldwater application. And then there's a 3-page research essay that we'll talk about a little bit more. And then the 3 letters of recommendation, and of course, official transcripts. I will go ahead and note on the transcripts that for the campus deadline in October, that can be an unofficial transcript. We don't make you pay $12 just to go through the campus process. If you're nominated, then you have to get an official one in January. All righty, I touched on some of these points about letters of recommendation earlier. So faculty in the STEM fields, faculty that have taught you or supervised your research. It's important, sometimes it's hard to do this, but you need to ask early, and you need to ask if they're able to write you a strong letter of recommendation, not just a letter of recommendation. And be sure and tell them why and what it's for, and give them context, right? So they may not know what the Goldwater is. They may not understand there's a campus process. And so it is going to be important that their letter's in October, because they might go to the Goldwater website and it says, oh, the national deadline's in February. Why are they telling me I need a letter in October? So you really need to have a dialogue. And I encourage you maybe to start that with an opportunity to start that by email. But schedule, if they're not in their office, schedule a Teams meeting or a phone call where you can talk with a potential recommender and ask them to write you a letter. You want to give them plenty of time to do this. And it's fine if you need to ask someone that's also serving on our Goldwater committee. They can certainly be letter writers if they're the right person for your application.
And this is a new part of it this year for 2021. They have a PDF handout that they expect you to give to your recommenders when you ask them to write for you. It offers guidance, right? So I would give that to them once they've said yes. And we can point you to that, of course.
Yeah, and this will be similar to the cover page that you all have done in the past. Great. Okay. The research essay, I'm going to just say that these are the main points, and I'm going to ask Dr. Moss to kind of comment a little bit more about it. But it's usually based on your prior and current research. You're identifying a problem. We have one member of the committee that wants a strong hypothesis. You want to discuss your research methodology. What are your findings? Be sure and note what your role is in the research. So the idea is that they want to see how you're thinking, that you are thinking like a scientist, and it's fine to have figures and charts to support your work. And there is the opportunity, and we encourage you to include it, to talk about the impact of COVID-19 as a part of your research, particularly if you had a plan and that was delayed or had to be repackaged in another way, then it's fine to include that. In fact, I think this is on the next slide, that again, this year, it was new last year, but there is a question that allows you to respond to how COVID-19 affected your research plan. So Alicia, I know that, for example, your research project ended up being virtual for 2 summers rather than just 1 summer. So if you were putting together your application this year, you really could talk about the impact of COVID, in that way. So good reminders that Goldwater recognizes research that doesn't just exist in a traditional research laboratory. Think about these other ways that you may have been involved in research, lit reviews, exploring a new question, analysis of current data, or if you've practiced and learned a new presentation skills. There's a skills section of the application that I think is really nice to allow you all to round out all of your activities within the application. Okay. Ethan, you want to go over this part?
Yes, sure. So the campus process, right? So the important deadline for that, of course, is October 18th. We've also got it up here on the board. That is the deadline for the application for that campus process, right? October 1st is the pre-application deadline. You'll fill that out, and it's very simple. It gives you access to the rest of the application. And once you've done that, and once you've submitted, right, our committee will select students to interview. I think we're choosing 8 this year. It kind of depends, yeah. Then we'll have 20-minute interviews early in November with the whole committee, where they'll talk about your application, they'll ask you some questions. And then from those interviews, we'll select 4 nominees to go on to the big national competition. After you've been selected to go on to the national competition, you'll be assigned committee mentors, and the committee will work with you, right, throughout that time between the final deadline and the October deadline. And we'll help you revise that application throughout the rest of the fall semester. And then that final application you'll submit at the end of January. Easy, right?
So let me flag too that the letters of recommendation are due for the campus process, but you do not ask your letters of you don't ask your letter writers to submit them in the online process. They are to email those letters to our office. And again, you're going to get this handy dandy little handout that'll be your checklist. And the reason we do that is because the final nominees are submitted in late January, right? And you're applying in early October. So you might get a new publication in December. And once your Goldwater letter is uploaded to the system, it can't be changed. So we ask that your letter writers email those in so that they have the opportunity, if you're nominated, to revise them for that final submission in January. So, question?
No, we want the names of the recommenders and then first and the recommendation letters themselves and then.
Correct. So the names go in the online application, but the letters are emailed in. So that'll be part of your instructions to your faculty member. And that's not going to be on the Goldwater PDF.
No.
So it's going to be on our internal handout.
Yes.
And this preliminary deadline, this takes very little information to do. Y'all could do this evening if you're planning on applying this year. And as soon as you do this, then you get into the full application so you can kind of really start working on it.
So now we can turn with some words of advice from our former Goldwater scholars. And luckily we have a couple of those here with us. So rather than read their words to you, perhaps they would like to say a few words about the process, some advice from them. So I welcome Matthew and Felicia to come on up and talk a little bit.
So as Ethan said, my name is Felicia, and I was very fortunate to win the Goldwater last year. And I don't know about you all, but listening to them explain it made me really nervous, even though I already won. Like, I don't know if you guys are really nervous. It seems like a really involved, nerve-wracking process. I literally almost threw up like 3 times. I was so nervous waiting for when you submit the campus nomination, I was really nervous about the interview. Like I would wake up in the middle of the night checking my email. So don't do that. But words of advice. Okay. So first thing that I want to say that I would really recommend is to start early. The fact that you're all here, you're taking initiative. I know that one of you is a freshman, some of you are sophomores. I applied when I was a junior. The best thing you can do if you haven't already asked for letters of recommendation, go ask for them. Go start the research essay because even though the Goldwater is comprised of the research essay and the personal essays, there's a lot of like other minute things you don't think about, like they ask you like what are students involved in. I think they even asked if like you studied abroad, and that itself takes like a whole nother job. You don't want to be doing that the night before. That's not fun. But actually, in terms of the actual application, something I always say to people is that what's really important is that your application is unique. We all love science. I'm a math major. We all like math. That doesn't make you stand out. Not to attack you guys, but there's going to be a ton of other people who are like, I like math. I like the way that science is discovering things. Like, that's not very unique. So you have to write something that it really can only be your application. So for me, I do autism research. And I really talk about the reason why I wanted this one to be researchers because of my brother, how this is the most important thing to me because the reason I do this is to help people like him. It doesn't have to be as serious as that. If you study physics, maybe you don't have a reasoning about a sibling, but just something that's really unique and personable to you. That's what's really going to make you stand out in my opinion.
Oh, no, great advice. I thought we stole all of
Oh,
it.
sorry.
Well, I think she hit a lot of good points on the application itself. For me, I think the most valuable advice I can give is that you need to kind of look at what you want to do past college. You have to really think about that, like, and be like kind of on track with what your goals are for. So for me, I want to go into data science as a PhD candidate, and all my coursework and all of what I am doing now is set up for that goal. Now, that's not to say you can't have passions outside of that, hobbies, to make the application more of you. So something I think I mentioned was I did ultimate frisbee, club frisbee, and how I threw that in there was, you know, I like trying new things. I took risks a lot through college. Something funny was I actually added computer science as a double degree right before COVID happened. So COVID really threw a wrench into my plans. But I'm still doing it and I'm really enjoying it. So yeah. And then also make sure to know your recommenders really well. So one of the things that helped me a lot was my research mentor. And I would talk to him now about possible kind of people to reach out to that he knows or she knows. And start talking to them about like, because you want these people to be big in their field and to also know you. And I think that that will really set you apart.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Let's bring Dr. Moss up to kind of fill in some of the information, particularly on the research essay and other advice she has, and then we'll open it up for Q&A.
So I want to start by playing off of two great pieces of advice that you just got from our former learners. One is that your application should be unique. So I sit on the national panel and I sit in a room for 3 straight days and I read stacks of 20, multiple stacks of 20 of these applications. And I have about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of each one. So I need to be reading all of these applications, and for some reason I keep remembering yours. That's kind of what helps you float back to the top of it. So I think the application being unique is really important. Also, that career path. So it's important to know where you're going and show the person reviewing your application that you're carving a path to get there. And I think these two things go a little bit together. You know, we've now talked about all these individual components of the application. What you need to remember is that it is one application. And you really need to use all those individual components to play into a single story. So maybe your personal career goals relate to the type of research you're doing, relates to that inspiring experience that you had, and how COVID may have influenced your path. You know, just as you're putting together these individual pieces of the application, keep thinking about how they actually work together with each other. And if you are advantageous enough right now to be a freshman or sophomore, you have time to carve out those things right now. So pick that next research project or the next elective strategically so that it plays into that story when you get ready to put your application in, at a later date if you're a freshman, or next year if you have to reapply, and you're building on what you started as a sophomore. So I think that in terms of thinking about the application, that's what's really important. I think the two most important pieces of the application are obviously the research essay. The two most important pieces of the application that you are going to write are the research essay and kind of that career goals. And those are probably the most important things that kind of link and play in together. You want to make sure that you can connect the research that you're doing with what you want to do in the future. One thing that I see a lot that's a little bit discouraging in some applications that makes me not remember them as I'm reading through them is you spend too much time talking about what you already do and zero time talking about what you want to do. You need to talk about both, and you need to connect those two things together. I mean, in terms of uniqueness, everybody applying for this application wants to go to graduate school. So when you talk about your future, it shouldn't be, I want to go to graduate school, or I want to go to graduate school, get a PhD in that. You want to kind of really describe the specifics of what type of research you want to do when you're pursuing that degree, where you want that research to take you in your career. Do you want to work in academia? Do you want to work at a national lab? Think about kind of those bigger picture types of questions. And one thing that I think is great about the Goldwater application is it does make you think about those things. And sometimes you reevaluate what your goals are, or maybe you think about them for the first time, and it really does create for you a little bit more intentional path, and that's going to help you in every step of your life. The other important part of the application is the letters, and I know that we've talked about those quite a bit already. They may be just as important as your research essay. And the gold standard is that all three of your letters can come from a faculty member or a PI that mentors you in research in some way, so that they really have a lot of depth in research. That is not always possible. So if one or two of your letters comes from somebody that taught you in class, what helps that letter is if that person can also talk about your research in some way. Maybe it's a class that relates to your research, or maybe it's a class that you were really strong in and picked something up to work on your research. But that faculty member will only know that if you tell them. So this is a really good opportunity. When we say get to know your letter writers, this is what we need. Make sure that they understand what type of research you're doing, how it might relate to what they could write in their letter. When a student asks me to write a letter, I send them back a response that says, yes, great, fill in this spreadsheet and answer these questions for me. And one of those questions is always, how does my letter help your application? What things can I, highlight about you that will further your goals? And not every faculty member is going to ask you for that, but it's sort of important to tell them that. Either in a conversation or in an email, hey, I'd really like you to write a letter for me, and here's why I picked you to write that letter. Because I took your class and it inspired me to do this research, or I've used these things that I learned in your class to work on my research, and you get a chance to describe your research a little bit. I was going to make, and I can't fully remember what it was. Can you go back to the list of the things in the application? There's another piece of it. Oh, that was what it was. I want to, in the research essay. So the most effective research essays that I see are research essays that talk about the problem you're studying, what you've done already in the lab that you're working on that problem, and what the next steps in the research are going to be. And those three things don't necessarily have to be equal. Maybe you know a lot more about what you've already done, and only the last paragraph is about where you're going. Or maybe you haven't done that much in the lab, but you've had lots of conversations with your lab mates about what you're going to do next. So you can balance those three pieces in terms of how they apply to you and how much you've done within the lab. But I think it's nice when you're able to put all three of those elements in there. And in terms of making your application unique, your research essay is a really great place to have an opportunity to do that. That first paragraph of your research essay is really important. you want to grab somebody's attention. You know, you don't want to start with, this is a great field and this many people have studied, something that everybody knows. I study Alzheimer's disease in my research. I wouldn't want to start my essay with Alzheimer's disease and disease of dementia. It involves neuronal degeneration, things that people already kind of know. If I started it with, Alzheimer's disease has this giant financial impact on this many people have been affected by Alzheimer's disease. Those sorts of things have a little bit more impact. So whatever it is about the research question that you're interested in, that in your elevator talk or your chit chat with grandma at Thanksgiving or whatever venues that you talk about your research, then put those things first. Put those really interesting things first so that whoever starts to read that essay goes, oh, this is really interesting. I can't wait to read more. But one other thing I will comment on is the MD PhD piece. So I don't want to say that MD PhDs versus PhDs are viewed terribly differently. I mean, if you're pursuing a PhD, it just becomes really obvious that research is your number one thing. If you are pursuing an MD PhD, you have to make it obvious that research is your number one thing. So if in your application, this kind of goes back to the application really needs to be a whole story. If in your application, you talk about wanting to, have a practice and see patients and how you're going to interact with your patients, you have in your activities, lots of hours where you've done tons of volunteer work with patient interface. Those things really make you look like you want to be a doctor, So you really have to play up in your application if you choose the MD PhD, how exactly you're focused on research and why that MD PhD is going to get you to that goal. I will also say, so in the national committee, it might help you to know how it works a little bit. The applications are read by discipline. So mathematics will be one discipline, and engineering is actually grouped together as one discipline. So if I am a mechanical engineer, I might read your mechanical engineering application. If you're a non-mechanical engineer, computer science is separate from engineering. Biological sciences are separate, but MD PhDs are also in a separate category. So those are all read in groups together. So that kind of gives you a little bit of insight. And of course, you always, when you prepare any kind of written document or presentation, you always want to write to your audience. And so now you have an idea of who your audience is. Your audience is a faculty member like me that is in your general discipline. And I think that when we say on the website exactly what all of this disciplines are. Actually, it's in the list. It's in the list. All right, I think that's everything. Did I miss anything? Is there anything you wanted me to touch on?
No, I think so. Let's ask questions of our experts here, particularly Dr. Moss and our FPMs. Questions are good.
So you put a lot of emphasis on that research as your career goal. Would it be like almost hurt you if you put that you're like things you did that would help you have a career in industry, such as like internships and
So
manufacturing?
it depends on how you frame it. If you write about your internship and talk about all the very industry-oriented things that you did and that you enjoyed doing these things, you want a job like this, yeah. But if you talk about it in the sense that, well, my favorite part of the internship was this kind of research-related thing that I did, and comparing that to running the process and looking at quality control, I now know that I really want to do this more research-oriented piece. So it depends on how you do it. And then the one thing I would say is be honest. If you really don't want to get a PhD and have a research-oriented career, this is not.
Yeah.
This is not the competition for you. There are lots of great competitions out there for you, but make sure that as you're putting that application together and telling your story about how you want to focus on research, that it comes from your heart. That really is kind of for your mindset.
So I did like this summer research thing and I had like 2 faculty people mentoring me. Could I ask like both of them?
You absolutely should.
Okay. So.
And the other thing I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but if for the October 18th deadline for campus, you can think of more than 3 people that might be good, ask them all.
Okay.
And then that way, we can help you decide which ones are the right ones to include.
And sometimes in those situations, if you had 2 mentors and one was junior to one was more senior, sometimes they've even written letters together, so. it's one of your
They
options.
can co-write a letter sometimes. If you, and that could, if you turn in 4 letters, we can say, oh, well, maybe we can ask these people to pull the letters together and that sort of thing too. The other thing I would say is the reverse is also true. If you did a summer research internship or research project someplace else or even here, and it shows up in your application and you don't ask that mentor for a letter, or at least somebody involved with that project for a letter, it looks a little suspicious.
Well, as a freshman, you're welcome to, what we can do is show you the components of application, but because you're not eligible this year, you're probably not going to get through the preliminary application. You're not going to get approved to apply this year because you're not a sophomore yet. What you would want to do is start thinking about the Goldwater is certainly, and this goes for all of you, then we're all available to have a next conversation. So look at your interests. You want to get started in research on campus. You can look at the components of the application, and you can start planning how you can be intentional about collecting research experiences and other campus experiences to make yourself a competitive candidate for this time next year.
It kind of goes back to being deliberate about your path. You have the opportunity to do that, but not necessarily reflect back and say, how can I make these things more deliberate? But you actually can be deliberate. So if you think about all these components of the application, and you look at a couple of successful ones, then you can think about what your career goals are and what you should be doing now to kind of put yourself in position.
I have a postdoc in my lab who I work really closely with. Would she be able to write a letter of recommendation, or should I only do full-time faculty?
I would not ask a postdoc without also asking the faculty.
But if I did both, would that be?
You can do both, but I would actually recommend is maybe trying to get those 2 people to co-write. And I can say, so, I have lots of students who work in my lab, and I don't have the opportunity to work on a daily basis with all of them. Other people in my lab, postdocs or graduate students, often work more directly with them. I always ask them for quotes so that I can get that input and put that quote into the letter that I'm preparing. So you can politely suggest that, or if you prefer, you can get letters from both of them, and we can help talk to your PI and postdoc and to make those things happen. The one thing I would say, postdocs are fabulous, but I have written probably 1,000 letters in my time, and they don't have that track record of experience. So even though the PI might not know you as well, they may end up writing a better letter because they're used to what that's. But if they can take the postdoc's words and put it into the letter.
Maybe a few comments on how to make that first paragraph stand out as far as like making framing your question in terms of how it affects people, things like that. Do any of y'all have any more ways you can elaborate on that, especially for those that don't directly apply?
Well, one thing you'll find helpful is in the Blackboard resource. You'll be able to look at some of our previous winners' research essays. And I don't know how many of those we have in there, but we have a whole lot in a big notebook up in our main office, does a store 3rd floor. And I know it seems weird, but you can come by the office and drop by and look at the notebook. We've been so out of practice of doing that the last 4 semesters, that might feel a little weird. But I think, you just look at a few of those ideas and then put it away and work your draft and use your own research advisor to help you as well. Again, you can reach out to any members of the Goldwater committee to get some advice on that as well. So if there's someone that's in your area on the committee, do a draft and go have a conversation with them. They like to talk with you about this kind of thing. You don't have to be hands off from the committee.
The other thing I would add is interesting is very discipline specific. If I read chemical engineering or biomedical engineering essay, those things are usually very interesting to me. If I read a mathematics essay, I feel pretty bored, but the mathematics people are captivated. So one other thing I would suggest, if there aren't enough essays in your particular field and kind of the examples, read some papers in the field and see how those kind of sort. There's always that introductory section of the papers, and that's some good examples of how, to kind of capture somebody's interest, because they're trying to do the same thing in the writing of papers. In mathematics, it is definitely unique.
I mean, for me, I'm in ecology research, and I've got papers in resources for ecology. What I did is I just wrote, just keep writing, write whatever you want, and then talk to as many people you can. Like, try to get their opinion and perspective on how they do their essay. So I have like a lot of good friends that are willing to not just look at the grammar, but the actual structure of my essay writing. And that will kind of add that interesting factor, I think, for you. That's really important.
And especially the people in the lab. They are sometimes more helpful than the Goldwater committee because they know your research better than we do. So.
Yes, I think it's good to remember writing never happens in a vacuum. So don't try to make your writing happen in a vacuum, right?
It is not cheating to ask for, postdoc mentor, graduate student mentor, or PI in the lab to look at your essay. It's absolutely effective.
But do include the prompt, because it might not be the exact prompt they're used to.
Also true.
So again, this is a unique application, and so you want to give them the context. So I think we might be getting close on time for
Yes.
Dr. Moss. So do we want to go over these wrap-ups and then if there's any other questions?
Yeah, cool. So for now you're interested, right? What do you do next? Well, you can come talk with me. I'm happy to talk with you. And of course my colleagues as well, like Novella, and maybe not Taylor in this case, but certainly a couple of our other colleagues here are happy to look at your materials and talk through what's next. Of course, get to know the Goldwater website, right? We've got it up here. Really spend some time with that and look at what's on there, right? The materials that are on there for a reason, and it's really useful. So really do get to know that a little bit. Then, the preliminary application, it's on the Goldwater website, which you'll know because you'll have spent some time with it. That's due October 1st, right? As we pointed out. So fill that out. Like Novella said, you can do that tonight. I mean, it's really not that detailed of a process. Remember that the 3 recommenders that you list there are not contacted automatically, right? So you guys need to reach out to those letter writers. You can begin working on your application materials and again, start thinking about your letter writers, identifying those people. You could talk with some of our fellowship peer mentors like Felicia and Matt, and we can help coordinate that too. So you can always shoot me an email and I'm happy to help you guys work that out. And of course, submit your application by the campus deadline, October 18th. So those are some things you can do. And what I'm going to do now is pass around our handouts. So please, if you haven't already taken one, grab one. I've got 3 coming around.
And I'm going to just ask on that handout, if you also could make a note, I think my name and Ethan's name are down for contacts, but we also have a national fellowship advisor, Jory Fleming, who's doing some part-time advising for us. He was a Goldwater Scholar, a UDO Scholar, a Truman Scholar, and a Rhodes Scholar. Actually the Hollings was his first, and he is available for these conversations. And so he can really kind of also give you the perspective of how this competition can help you in a long-term process. So Novella Beskett, Ethan Knight, Jory Fleming, or really any of our staff can work with you.
And of course, here's a quick look at our website and our materials. And we have both in-person and online meetings that we can schedule for you. So whatever you're more comfortable with, whatever works best for you.
Any last questions for Dr. Moss?
Does the committee at all consider like global impact of research or goals in considering applications?
I would say not on a checklist, but kind of subliminally, because I think that plays into that interesting part, right? When they can't see the purpose of the research or why you're asking the research question, it becomes less significant. So, I mean, anything that I try to prepare to get funded, which is essentially what you guys are trying to do, impact and significance is important. So I think that it would play to that.
Question about other research outside of STEM. Is it important to include other research outside of STEM in an application? Like, let's say I was in a paper that I wrote for research in class and then they want some sort of award. Would that be important to include on an application essay if it has the right place, I guess?
So generally, a project associated with class is not really classified as like independent research. So I'm not sure I would list it as a research project. So in the application, you have research project 1, research project 2. But if there is a way to work that into one of your other essays, and there's a list of like awards and activities, you could list that under an award. I think that's the more appropriate list.
Okay, last question for Dr. Moss, because she's got a hard deadline, and we can help with some of this
I have to go
too.
get my car at the shop.
Sorry, so, I know you said that it's not really good to have people who aren't in STEM to write your letter of rec, but what if, like, you're working with someone who's like in the humanities department, but they do like STEM applications of like biomedical applications, like the ethics
I would say
behind-
if they have some relationship to the research that you're doing, then absolutely. That's
Okay.
appropriate. 'Cause they can
okay.
speak for your research work.
Oh, okay.
An example I was thinking about was an applicant years ago that asked an English professor, and just because they'd done well in a freshman English
Right.
class,
Oh,
and that didn't
And I've
help.
seen applications where, somebody's asked their doctor because they don't get a PhD or, like really.
Don't ask your mother. We've gotten those as well. So, yeah, that won't help. But let's thank Dr. Moss, and then we can take any more questions. So,
I'm pretty easy to find on the website or
you're on the list.
And I'm on the list. Okay, so if you guys have questions that I didn't get to answer today or that you think about later, feel free to shoot me an email. And I'm happy to answer them by email or set up a time to talk, whatever works. So.
Thank you so much. And truly, you've got your own campus group of experts here. And Matt, I think you could probably attest that the committee really does care about students in the process. I would say you are. In terms of giving feedback along the way. Felicia, I think so too, but you had a little bit more history with the Goldwater. And so don't hesitate to reach out and use your National Fellowships team. So
I did not make it the first time I applied. So I actually went through the process twice. I didn't make it through the campus.
you weren't nominated as a
Yeah.
sophomore. You made it.
But I made it.
Yeah. So we appreciate that and hope that actually the committee met with you and kind of mentored you along the way. So these folks are really dedicated. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I was wondering, if you like submit an application, what, does it like, does the second application have to be about like a different research?
Not necessarily, but it can be if your research has changed from your sophomore year to your junior year. Good question.
So the preliminary application with the three recommenders, those should be the final three that are going to be submitting letters of recommendation, right? They shouldn't change after the preliminary.
Excuse me.
We have some flexibility, so you can only put in 3 names. But as we said earlier, if you've got 4 fantastic people, you can't put in 4 names, right? So you just let us know that you're going to send in 4 letters. And because the letters, how are the recommenders sending their letters in? By email. So you actually can send in the 4
But it should be
recommenders.
at least those 3 that are listed.
Right. I don't think that it'll let you submit a preliminary application without 3 names in there.
Members of the Goldwater Scholarship Committee can be recommenders, right?
Correct. Correct. And we are happy to talk with you about your recommenders. It's something that I actually enjoy doing. It's like helping you think outside the box sometimes, who to ask, how to ask, and what information they might need. So don't feel like you have to do that alone either. We're really here to talk you through and support you through the whole process.
So with that preliminary application, when we put a recommendation, they are not notified. Like,
That's
so we
correct.
have to wait after the second one.
That's great. The preliminary application, because you have to go through and be nominated by campus, it is ensuring you're in the right that you're eligible to apply, okay? And without any letter writers, you're not going to be eligible to apply. And sometimes we do have students that are looking to go straight to med school and they're not eligible for the Goldwater, or they may not be eligible as a sophomore or a junior. And so it really just makes sure that we've got everybody on the right track for this year. Great questions. What else? So 2022, 30 years of Goldwater Scholars at U of SC. Gonna do it. Felicia, Matt, any parting words of advice?
So there are a few questions about humanity. I will say, so my research, actually, if you look at the list of Goldwater ones from last year, my research is categorized as psychology.
Social science.
Yeah, I'm one of the few students who categorized psychology because even though I'm a math major, I don't do math at all. I have no idea what that is. But they'll let you like, I guess, apply as a psych researcher if you use applications of STEM. So one of my recommenders was my PI, who is from the psychology department. Another one was the PI, my internship I did over the summer, and he is in the psych department. He's a linguistics professor. I think that's him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like
Their social sciences are included. So yeah, I'm sure. Good point. Good point. Thanks for adding that.
Like you said, the committee is like awesome people. Like Dr. Mead, I had Dr. Mead and Dr. Margot help me out. They're fantastic. Something that wasn't really touched on, I feel like, was what comes after you win the Goldwater. We have, as like a Goldwater kind of group, have a Slack team page, and we all talk with one another on different topics, and we all give advice for grad school, and it's a really great organization to be a part of. And then also on top of that, you can be part of a mentor program where you're mentored by a fellow Goldwater winner. I'm the mentee of Riley, who won the Goldwater Frontier not too long ago. But he's now a PhD and working for a private institution out in Colorado. So, and he works in data science. So it's really cool to already know somebody out in the field and somebody where you want to be in the future.
That is very cool. Yeah. To piggyback off that, I feel like the network we have with the scholars is my favorite thing. So I'm in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion mentorship program. And I didn't even tell you all about this, but so I'm mentoring some students from HBCU Louisiana, called Xavier University, because a lot of other schools don't have the resources we have here. We have a great national scholarship team. We have people in every year, but most schools do not have people in every year. They may go 10 years without a winner. So they basically rely on like people in the Goldwater community to help other schools. And I've just started the process, but it's been the most fulfilling thing to be able to share my knowledge with students, specifically other students of color. So there's a lot of great personal things that can come from this aside from the money and the prestige.
Great points. We appreciate that. And when you go in info, so on our website, there are 2 things that I would encourage you to look at. Look at info, because you're also going to look at other STEM related competitions. If you're a sophomore, you need to look at Hollings. Every sophomore that's interested in research needs to look at Hollings and make sure, see if you're a fit for that. You can start thinking about, if you're a junior, you need to start thinking about senior year competitions. There are summer opportunities in there. And also look under National Fellowship News. Read the stories about our winners, not just this year but in previous years. Get an idea of what they were doing. They're included in those stories. And when you go in info, you can look at the list of USC's winners And we are also happy to connect you with alums in the field, particularly if you're in an area that you feel like you don't have quite as many colleagues on this campus. So
And if you haven't signed up for it already, I have a QR code for our candidate newsletter, which will keep you in the know about deadlines and news and all sorts of things. That one's for our quick start guide, but this one, so on your way out, is for the candidates. So if you want to grab that with your camera too. So make sure you have a handout for sure. There are 3, and I sent around some business cards. So, yeah.
you good? All right, go Goldwater, go Gamecocks. Thank y'all. Where was the camera?
So the camera only records the screen and our audio, so that when we post it, we don't have to have our little screen, because,
We didn't get Melissa.
well, hopefully we picked up her audio, although she was awfully far from the, because I think we use the computers, oh, I thought he was handing me his phone.
Thank you.
Of course,